Hello and a very warm welcome to The Real Talk. How have you been? Our guest today is an exciting gentleman. He will stand out of the crowd because of his choice of the tie he wears. Can you imagine that? There's that crazy thing you pick, and whenever you are in a crowd, it will make you stand out. You'll find out who it is that we're hosting today. Our guest today is Ambassador Omar Daair. D-A-A-I-R. Ambassador, it's such a pleasure to see you.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you.
Thank you very much for honoring our invitation. Ambassador Daair is the British High Commissioner to Rwanda and non-resident ambassador to Burundi. It will be great for us to get to know more about him today. Ambassador Daair, why do you like wearing those very colorful kitenge ties?
Yeah, it's become a bit of my trademark. And I think there's probably two sides to it, actually. Yeah. So my grandmother actually grew up for the first 35 years of her life in Tanzania. And even after she left, she used to wear a lot of kangas, which is pretty similar. So I think maybe that influenced my fashion choices a bit. And I've always liked the kind of cultural blending. Yeah. But the second thing I'd say is, years ago, a prominent female ambassador told me that, at diplomatic events, it's very easy to go unnoticed or to be forgotten. True. So when she wanted to be noticed, she'd wear her most colorful dress. And I always thought it's a bit harder for men to do in our boring suits, but the kitenge ties have sort of solved that problem for me now.
You nailed it perfectly. We would never miss you in a crowd. Wonderful. Tell us a bit about yourself. Where were you born? How was your childhood? What kind of family were you raised in?
Yeah, so I come from a mixed family, actually. A mixed culture, mixed religion, mixed nationality. My mother is British, from London, and my father is Yemeni. But he and his family were in Tanzania, as I said before. They eventually moved back to Yemen. I myself was born in London in the UK, but quite soon moved to the United Arab Emirates in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. We lived there in my childhood because my parents were working there, and they're still both living there, actually. So it was quite a sort of blended childhood because of those different backgrounds that we had. But it was very nice. I enjoyed living somewhere different and getting to know a new culture, a new place, and I think that stayed with me over time.
Did it affect you in any way, the frequent movements and the diversity?
I think definitely the diversity bit, because the school I went to in the UAE was very internationally diverse. And I think for me that meant I had from the beginning a real interest in learning about other countries, learning about other cultures. And I think that influenced my choice of careers later on, probably.
Yeah, because I was going to ask, so then, as you grew up, then time came for you to make a career choice. How did you choose the courses, the subjects to do, the course to undertake for you to end up here?
Yeah, so I wasn't sure what I wanted to do when I was a teenager, but I was very interested in issues around, social justice, international relations, and so I studied politics at university because I felt I wanted to do something that had a bigger impact than just making money, to try and, do some good in the world. And that led me to a path of thinking about diplomacy. And I think perhaps because of my family background, I became very interested in perhaps working on the Middle East or working on Africa, because my father and his family had talked a lot about their childhoods in Tanzania. They're all Swahili speakers as well as Arabic speakers. And so I had these very colorful ideas of what it was like to live in Africa, and I always wanted to see that for myself. So I think that pushed me a bit in this direction.
How many children are you in the family?
We're 3.
Oh, great. And are they with your parents in UAE, or are they back in?
So my brother is with my parents in the UAE. My sister lives in London, and I live in Kigali. So we have continued this sort of mixed
families all over the place.
Way, yeah.
Do you have any valuable lessons that you got from your school days?
Yeah, I mean, it's partly that appreciation of diversity that we were talking about. But I think for me, it also was a reminder that you're not always going to fit in. When you come from a mixed background, sometimes you don't feel enough this one or enough the other, but that's okay. Your uniqueness is your strength, and I think being confident in that was a lesson I learned growing up.
Interesting you should say that. A few weeks back, I hosted a gentleman who's half-caste, and he's never met his Belgian dad. His Rwandan mom, raised him alone. And he said in most cases, he found himself, in whether it was in school or family or any sort of gathering, he always was the odd one out. Growing up, he didn't like it at all, but as he grew older and wherever he is today, he's appreciated the uniqueness that comes out, brings about, and he's using it as his strength.
I think that's exactly right, and that's very much how I felt. I mean, me and my siblings used to joke when we were kids, we called ourselves halfy-halfies because we were half of two things. And I think it was harder when we were younger because you wanted to be like your British cousins or your Arab cousins. But over time, you realize, actually, I understand two cultures. I understand what it's like to be British. I understand what it's like to be Arab. And that's a good thing, not a bad thing.
Exactly. I'm cool that way.
Exactly.
So how did you end up being the British High Commissioner here? If you can just take us through that journey.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, because of my background, I think I initially thought I would work more on the Middle East. And so when I joined the Foreign Service, that was my kind of idea of where I would go with my career. But my first international posting was in Sudan, in Khartoum. And I have to say that the Sudanese people are just an incredibly welcoming, kind and nice people. So I immediately felt very affectionate about the country. But while living there, I started to travel more around Africa, visiting more countries. And I just feel this continent is so energetic. There's so many opportunities here. There's such youth here that it's hard to come and be in Africa and not feel, I want to be part of that. Yeah. So my whole career shifted to focus on Africa, and I followed that path ever since. And then when this opportunity came up, and in our system we have to apply for these and compete for them. Okay. And Kigali is a popular place to come, but I felt very lucky to secure this job because the work is interesting, the place is lovely to live in. Yeah. So it's a good place for me.
Something interesting you've said. I thought you're handpicked, head-hunted, but you're saying you had to apply for that position.
Yeah, so our system changed a few years ago. It used to be very much like you're talking about. In some countries, it still operates that way for ambassadors, but for us, it's not. We have to express a preference, and then we compete with the other people who have expressed the same preference. But I think that's good, because what it means is you can follow your own passions and to try and work in places that you really feel energized about, and that's what I've done.
As opposed to just being sent somewhere.
Exactly.
Maybe you will work there, yes, but it will just be about work. And then you happen to come in at a time when Rwanda was preparing to host CHOGM. How was that transition for you? How did you feel about this big event that was coming up?
Yeah, it was a bit unexpected, to be honest, because when I got the role, it was some years before I actually started, and I was expecting CHOGM to have already happened because it was meant to happen.
It was meant to happen here before COVID.
But because of COVID, it got delayed. So for me personally, it worked out quite well because I was lucky to host this event. And we had such a huge UK delegation came. The now King came, the then Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, the President of COP. It was a huge delegation. So it was very, very busy, but it was very exciting and a fun time to be in Kigali, I think.
Were you worried, being that you were still new, were you scared that something could go wrong and maybe I will look bad, I'll fall short?
I think when you're hosting the future monarch, who is now the monarch, you always feel a little bit of fear if it goes wrong. But I think what I was lucky in is that I had a very good team who had already practiced this twice because it had been postponed twice. So they held my hand, they helped me, and we managed to do it. We also brought out some extra people to help us from London as well.
And so, our two countries have been great partners, bilateral partners. I wonder, from where you sit and the relationship between the two governments, what would you say is the UK's greatest interest in this country?
Yeah, I mean, I think we are very good partners, and we have been for some time, since the genocide against the Tutsi. I think our relationship has just got stronger and stronger. We didn't used to have an embassy here, before 1994. And I think now there's probably 5 areas that I think we work on most.
5 of them?
Yeah, I'd say education, particularly girls' education, which we might talk a bit about afterwards. Climate and how we respond to climate change is an area we're very close on. The economy and boosting trade is something that is important to both countries, and we're hoping to host a UK-Rwanda Business Forum in January. The 4th is our migration partnership, where we are trying to offer a solution to this very difficult issue. And the fifth is around sort of support on governance and accountability, where we work closely with government institutions on those issues. So it's probably those 5 areas that we focus on.
And is that 5 in that order, or?
Not necessarily in that order.
Okay.
I probably would say that girls' education is our top one at the moment,
Yes.
but otherwise it's pretty...
Yes, I was actually going to go to ask about education and girls' education, to be precise. The Building Learning Foundations program, I know, is one that you steered and one that your government invested a lot in. It just recently came to an end. If you could tell us more about BLF.
Yeah, BLF was a really important multi-year program that we worked on with the government of Rwanda, with REB, with the Ministry of Education, and it worked in all primary schools across the country, particularly looking at building the capacity of teachers and learning outcomes in English and in maths, because those are 2 areas that we think create the real foundation for students to improve. And what we found now that the program has come to an end were really strong results from that. So I was looking at the data, and in P1 to P3, the numbers that have achieved grade proficiency in maths has more than doubled. The numbers that achieved that in English has almost tripled. And we also worked with about 3,000 school leaders to build their capacity as well in leading their schools. And we've seen real impact from that. So I think it has been a very positive program and something that we were very proud to work on with the government of Rwanda.
Yeah. I wonder, how do you identify the 5 areas to focus on? And is it the prerogative of the High Commissioner, or is it your government, or the 2 governments sit and discuss? What's the process of identifying the areas?
Yeah, I think it's a mix. So for our government, they will have priorities in London and we will have priorities in London, and certainly women and girls is one of our biggest priorities. We released a new women and girls strategy earlier this year, which is focusing on educating girls, on empowering women and ending GBV. So that's always going to be an important one. Then climate, I think, globally, that's just the biggest challenge that we're facing at the moment. And I think a lot of governments have realized that, including ours. But then it's a partnership and a discussion between us and our partners here in Rwanda. And what's good about working with the government of Rwanda is that it's a very ambitious government for its own development in this country. And so, they don't need outsiders to come and tell them what to do. They know what they want to do.
Yeah.
It's how can we as international partners support that? How can we give technical advice or other things to build towards that vision that the government already has?
Funny you mention outsiders and diplomatic relations. Often African countries will say, that outsider came and they really imposed this on me. Has there been an occasion in your time in office where you felt like, I'm trying to say this, but they're not taking it politely because they feel like I'm an outsider? Have you ever felt that way, whether in Rwanda or anywhere else you've served?
Yeah, I think sometimes there is that, because I think what anybody wants, whether in Africa or anywhere else, is to feel that you're having a dialogue of equals.
Yeah.
And I would say that, if I'm honest, I don't think we in the UK or in Western countries have always got that right in Africa. I think it has sometimes felt a bit like you're talking down to your partners in that country. And what we've realized in the recent years is that doesn't work, because it's the people who are in the country who know what's best for them and how they want to develop. So it's got to be a partnership where we're exchanging and not one way. So I think we've definitely changed on that. I sometimes also try to use my own experience, because my father grew up under colonialism, for example. He's now got a British wife, but growing up, he had some different views about what it was like to have British presence around. And I think that's helped me understand a bit where people are coming from sometimes when they feel that they're getting lectured, or that we're not thinking through their interests enough. And so I try to use that background also to help me understand.
That's actually really good. Did your father ever talk to you about colonialism?
Yeah, so I think it was a mixed relationship for them. They did get some benefits. My father did get a scholarship to the UK as a result of it, but also, they watched when there was just complete division between the British, administration and local people in either in Tanzania or in Yemen when they moved back there. And so I think what we've learned is, it's got to be a partnership. It can't be sort of one way.
Yeah. Let's go back to now when you arrived, and I wonder, setting foot in Rwanda, a place that you actually wanted to come to, that's why you applied for the position. Did you find what you expected to find? How was how was the first impression?
Yeah, so I'd been to Rwanda once before, but very briefly, and it was about 10 years before I came back. So I had a bit of an idea of what to expect. But I was shocked when I came back how much had happened in those 10 years. You know, Kigali had developed a lot. There were a lot more buildings there. There was so much going on in the city. You know, we talked about Chogam, but you know, every week in Kigali there is some other big
something
event.
big happening.
Once we got past the COVID period, at least, and I think that wasn't quite there in 2012, when I came there last time. It wasn't as big a kind of MICE hub of conferences and so on. So that's been really nice.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was I'd only been to Kigali that first time, so it was really nice this time to discover other parts of the country, which are just stunningly beautiful. So that's been good.
Which parts of the country have you been to and where do you love most?
So I've been to most of it. Nyungwe is still on my list that I haven't been to, but
You've
I've been
not
to
been there?
not yet.
Oh,
so
goodness.
I'm saving it still for this final year. But
Okay.
Lake Kivu in particular is really beautiful. But also I particularly like Gishwati National Park. There's a very small guest house there with only 2 rooms, and it's just one of the most beautiful views you can have. And so I've been there a few times. It's a very relaxing spot.
Did I hear you say final year? This is your last year?
Yes, unfortunately it is.
How long is your tenure?
They're 3 years, so I still have about a year left, but I am in
Gosh.
my last year, so September next year, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you plan to spend the last year of your time here? What sort of changes do you think you're going to make?
Yeah, I mean,
Or
I think
adjustments?
sort of consolidating on some of the good work we've had. We've also got new programs that we're launching. You know, we have a new girls' education program. We've got some new climate work coming. But I particularly want to focus on the trade agenda because that's an area that is growing. So that's why we are planning this big UK Rwanda Business Forum in January. And then in the UK, we'll be hosting an Africa Investment Summit where we have also invited His Excellency to come to London for. And I think that's an area because, you know, development cooperation can be one part of, you know, the growth journey and our partnership. But I think trade and investment is also another very important part.
Yeah. We're talking to Ambassador Omar Daair, who's the British High Commissioner to Rwanda and non-resident ambassador to Burundi. It's interesting to get to know a little bit more about him, but also just get to know more about the relationship between our 2 countries and governments and the different areas that we're partnering in. My name is Jackie Lumbasi. We're coming to you from Mythos Boutique Hotel in Kiyovu. When you find time, you should check them out. They have this corporate lunch that they serve every weekday. I would love you to try it out. We will be back in a bit. Welcome back. We're glad to have you with us on The Real Talk. Please use the hashtag The Real Talk. Ambassador Omar and myself will be online. We will respond to your questions and comments. If you have a question that you'd love to bring to the attention of the British High Commission, take this opportunity to send that through and somebody will definitely respond to you. And we're coming to you from Mythos. Thank you for joining us. Ambassador Omar, immigration is one of the 5 areas of interest. We've talked about education. I want us to touch on immigration. There's a contentious issue that seems to be taking long to resolve. If you could just kindly take us back to where the conversation on immigration started between the UK and the Rwandan government, and why has it hit a stalemate?
Yeah, so we've been talking about this for some time with the government of Rwanda. I think what we both realise as the British government and the Rwandan government is that there is a real problem with illegal migration at the moment, where we see particularly criminal gangs who are exploiting some very vulnerable, very desperate people to pay thousands of dollars to undertake very dangerous journeys, first across the Sahel or other places, and then across the Mediterranean, and finally across the British Channel. And you're seeing a very large number of people losing their lives in those journeys. And, you know, they are hoping for a better life. They are hoping for security and safety, and those are legitimate things to be hoping for. But it is just unconscionable to see that many people losing their lives in the sea in that way. So what both governments, I think, wanted to do was come up with a new way of trying to tackle this problem that would provide people with a genuine need for safety with that safety, the people who have a genuine protection need a new life and new security, but that wouldn't only involve them, taking risky journeys to Europe or the United Kingdom. And so that partnership was born through that sort of ideal, and we agreed with the government of Rwanda what we think is an innovative way of dealing with that problem. It has been challenged in the courts in the United Kingdom, so it's the government of the United Kingdom that has been taken to the courts, and there have been two cases so far. One that the British government won, the second appeal, which was a mixed result, but was in some ways a defeat for the government. It's now in the Supreme Court, so we expect the Supreme Court to rule within the next month or 6 weeks. And the government is still confident that this is a good partnership and is the way that we should try and approach this problem. But for now, we have to wait for the court to rule. And once it has, then we will be able to look at the next stage.
Okay. And consider when two countries have a diplomatic relationship and then you've got a situation like this one, is there a time when the ambassador is called in to share his thoughts? You're resident here, you know the country. A lot could be said or alleged about the country that you live in. Is there room for you to be called in, maybe to answer questions?
Well, now the court case is finished and I wasn't called, so I think that won't happen. But I think what is clearly is both my colleagues in London, me here, and then also the government of Rwanda here, and my opposite number, the High Commissioner in London, will speak about this issue. We have discussed why we got into it, what we think are the safeguards and the systems that are put in place that would make this arrangement work. So I think, we're still confident in being able to implement it, but we do need now to wait for the court's decision.
Yeah. I asked that question because there will always be stories told about different countries. Oh, don't go to this country because it's not safe. Don't go to the other country for this, that, and the other reason. But that country saying that has its citizens in that country. It's got an ambassador in that country. If a country is so unsafe, why then would you have such representation in a country? That's why I asked that question.
One of the things that I've found interesting since I've been here, because we've had a very large number of visitors, not just from government and our ministers, but from members of parliament, from private sector and other things. I have not yet met somebody who came and visited and left with a more negative view of Rwanda than they came with. Most people, I think, come and see that there are a lot of positive things happening, that there is progress, there's development. That's not to say that things are perfect. Things aren't perfect in my country. Things aren't perfect, I think, in any country. But they also see what's changing. And I think that's the important thing, to make sure that people are seeing a real situation and not just remembering something or taking things as stereotypes.
Exactly. Yeah. We've talked about education, migration. Let's go to agriculture. How is your government involved in ensuring that small farmers in Rwanda are not left out, they don't lose out? I've talked to different people, even bank representatives, and at times when farmers, especially small-scale farmers, feel like they're ripped off. They'll sell their commodities at a very cheap price. It will go elsewhere, value addition, then it comes back and it's sold at a very high price. Basically, the people that grow this crop end up making very little. So how is your government, what is your government doing to ensure that you guarantee some sustainability and growth for these farmers?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair challenge, and I think a lot of agriculture, floriculture producers feel that the value addition is happening somewhere else, and I think it is important that, we ensure fair trade and try and bring some of the value addition back. For the UK, the sector that we work in here that I think is of most relevance is the tea sector. And we drink a lot of tea in the UK, and we actually are the second largest market internationally for Rwandan tea because it's very high quality. So we have a program that works in different parts of the country, including in Rwanda, supporting smallholder farmers and helping them to improve the quality of their product, helping them bring in greater investment from the outside. And that has been, I think, quite successful. What you see in Rwanda now is I think the tea sector that is the best managed of any in the East Africa region. And you see a split of 50-50 between what the farmers get when the product is exported and what goes to the factories, for example. And that's actually the best split in the region that we see. So I think that is a positive thing. The other thing that they kind of focus on quality that we've been trying to support has helped really highlight the quality of the product. And I can say particularly the tea from Rwanda is excellent. But that means that at auction, you're seeing Rwandan tea go for up to $6 a kilo. When you compare that to, I think it's $3.50 for Kenyan, $2 for Tanzanian. And so I think that's also helping bring in more money to the sector. It doesn't solve all of the problems that you're talking about, but I think it's an important part. On coffee, we don't work as much in that sector, but we are...
You're tea people,
we are
clearly.
Tea people. But we're trying to drive up the visibility of Rwandan coffee in the UK, because coffee is a big growth sector for us despite our traditions. Yeah. And so as part of the business forum I was talking about, we're also going to be organizing a cupping competition where there's experts and buyers who come to taste different types of Rwandan coffee to show what quality it is and to hopefully increase the demand for it in the UK.
Oh, when is that going to happen?
January.
Oh, lovely. Oh, yes, at the event they're planning. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I wonder, how do people get to participate? Or are you selecting those that are...
Yeah, so we just had a meeting yesterday with lots of different bits of the Rwandan government, so with RDB, with Minagri, with many others. So we're now just pulling together the plans of exactly how it will work, but we'll be contacting people soon.
Yeah. What would you say has been the biggest challenge in your work since you joined the Foreign Service? What's been your biggest challenge? And how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I think there are different ways. I'd say on a personal level, the biggest challenge is also one of the biggest benefits of working in diplomacy, but it's moving a lot. When you move from different country to different country, I've lived, I think, in 5 different countries so far in doing this job. And each time you move, you leave friends behind, you get close to, staff that are recruited in country, you miss your family. Those are challenges, I think, that are difficult. And then we've also had some challenges around, internal dynamics. We merged recently our development ministry and our foreign ministry. And that created some challenges internally that we've had to overcome. But I think what I have really enjoyed is that within the ministry, we have really excellent colleagues, both the British colleagues and our colleagues that work locally for us. And that's always been something that wherever there are times of stress has really helped me think, we're trying to make this better.
Yeah, and talk about such challenges and the fact that you leave friends behind. Friendship is something that we nurture, we grow, and it's a source of inspiration. Considering you've always had to leave them, do you have any friendships that you say, these friendships have lasted, or this friend has been around, and this friend has helped me in my career, in this life journey?
Yeah.
If you have any friend or a group of friends that you'd love to acknowledge.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my final school that I moved to that school in 1991, and I made a small group of friends early on in that time who are now, I still message them every day, this group. And I think it's really important to have those kind of friends because they don't care how important you become, or if you're a high commissioner, if you're something else, they'll still, make fun of you, or they'll still tell you if you get something wrong. Yeah. And I think you need that to be grounded. But I think you also need those people to, that you feel you can be totally honest with. They've seen you all those years, and they know the real you. And so you can be honest about the challenges that you're facing or when you're going through difficult times. And so I'm very glad to still have that group.
Yeah. That's nice. I guess we need that. We all need that because in most cases, as you go higher, you tend to attract a lot of cosmetic, fake friends. So you need the real ones that will call you out when there is need. What will you miss most about this country when your tenure comes to an end?
Yeah, so since I still have a year left, I'm trying not to think too much about
Please
what
don't.
I missed.
Actually, maybe I should have just scratched
but,
that. I should have
but I
asked that
think
question.
if I was to think about now in particular, I think the nature, because both, and I mean that both the kind of scenery, because the lakes, the national parks are so beautiful, but then also the wildlife. I was never interested in birds, for example, before I came to Rwanda. And then just looking out my window at the birds that live in my garden in Rwanda is amazing. And they're so beautiful, and I think I will definitely miss that. But then I'll also miss my colleagues here because I've had a really great team.
Yeah. You've talked about your birds because I follow you on social media, and you've talked about the birds, you've talked about the trips of country, you've talked about the art, and you've talked about your love for African wear as well, your nice African shirts. What will you take home with you? What is it that you'd want to see replicated back home from here?
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the art I will take with me, I think, but also what I like here is the dance, the traditional Rwandan dance, which comes out a lot at whether it's diplomatic events, whether it's weddings and so on. And I like that it comes out even at more formal events, because in British offices, you won't generally see dancing in a formal event, but I'd like that. I actually did some lessons in traditional Rwandan dance to try and learn it a bit. I think my teacher was a bit disappointed with my lack of skills, but I'll keep trying so I can take it back to the UK with me.
That was a tough call. I haven't seen any British man or woman dance, really. Why would they think you're going to do it? This is The Real Talk on RTV. Thank you so much for joining us. And don't forget to use the hashtag The Real Talk if you have a question or a comment that you want to give to us. Is there any question that you feel, and we've got a segment called 6 Qs, we're getting to it. Is there any question you feel I should have asked during this sit down and I haven't asked?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I was thinking, in coming here, what I would say was sort of the biggest achievement of my time here. But I think perhaps we've touched on that with Chogum, just because I felt managing that was such a large thing. But I think what I'll take away is just I feel, the relationship between our two countries has strengthened over the time that I've been here. And I think that's what any ambassador would like to see, that the relationship, that we can have an honest, frank and friendly relationship.
Yeah, that's nice. We will be back in a bit. Glad to have you with us on The Real Talk. My name is Jackie Livasi, and our guest is Ambassador Omar Daair. We're talking about his life, his career, and just getting to know him well. We see a lot of these people on TV, at events, but you never get that close to them to just dig a little bit deeper. Ambassador Omar, let's talk about climate change. That is what everyone is talking about now. We recently had a climate summit in Kenya. We've seen the UN General Assembly. It's been talked about. What is the UK government doing about climate change? What are those adjustments that you're making to make sure that the impact of climate change is not as severe, but also to contain it?
Yeah, I mean, this really is a huge challenge, and we hosted COP26 in Glasgow a couple of years ago, and that really sort of strengthened the momentum towards things like trying to reduce reliance on fossil fuels and to try and increase support for renewable energy, for electric cars, for that sort of thing. We've also committed to really increase the amount of climate financing that we make available in our development work. And I think that's a really important thing that, more developed and richer countries can do to help in this, because we also know that the more developed countries are more to blame for the emissions that we have seen. So we're trying in my team to translate that into how we work with Rwanda on these issues. And I think Rwanda has been a real regional leader on a lot of these things. So we, from the very early days, worked with FENEWA, now known as the Green Fund here in Rwanda, to capitalize, to give it financing. And I think that's been a very innovative body that has helped promote green changes here. But we've also encouraged UK investment in green technologies here. So you're seeing companies that are investing in solar technology, in electric vehicles, and we've helped fund some of that in the early days. And then more recently, at the last COP in Sharm el-Sheikh, Rwanda announced Ireme Invest, which is another very innovative fund that will try and crowd in private sector funding to support green transition in Rwanda. And so we announced another £7 million to support that fund. Because I think what is true is that governments can only do so much, and it really needs to be a partnership with the private sector as well. But sometimes the private sector finds it risky to go into green businesses, and so what governments can do is help to de-risk it, to put some of the early funding in, or to provide, security for loans and that sort of thing. So I think we work very innovatively in that way. And then the final thing I'd mention is there's a really great centre here, the Africa Centre of Excellence on Sustainable Cooling, which is at the University of Rwanda. But it's a partnership that's funded between the government of Rwanda, the government of the United Kingdom, and the UN Environmental Programme. And that's really, a first of its kind centre that's working on technology and equipment that will really help us do cooling solutions in a sustainable way. Because, to get agriculture to market, to move medicines around the world, they need to be kept cool, but often that's really polluting. So we need to find ways to do that in a clean way. And this centre in Kigali, I think, is going to be a real pioneer in driving those solutions.
Okay. Well, I admire that. I appreciate that response. And then the BLF ending, are you going to say that's the end of your support to the education sector, or is there something else that you're planning to do?
No, so it's certainly not the end. We've just announced a new program, which is called Girls in Rwanda Learn, or GIRL for short, which is a £50 million program which will work over the next 5 years. And that's building on some of the great things that BLF has already done in English and mathematics. But it's also particularly focusing on the poorer performing schools, so to try and help raise their learning outcomes for students. So we're estimating that that will end up helping about 700,000 new students. It's also got a fund in it to help bring back students who have left the education system. So, through COVID, through other reasons, we saw some people fall out of the education system, and we'd like to get them back into schools. So we're helping that. And then we're also having a focus on inclusive education, so particularly mainstreaming education that is supportive of disabled students and thinking about how we can help them fulfill their potential. So there'll be more to it than that, but those are sort of some of the fundamental parts of it. And again, we're working very closely with partners like the Ministry of Education, with UNICEF and others to try and support the learning outcomes of students here.
Yeah, great. We'll be looking at 6 Qs where we get to find out the quick and not very quick responses to our questions that help us get to know the ambassador better. We're coming to you from Mythos Boutique Hotel in Kiyovu. You should follow them on the different social media platforms, Hotel Mythos. We'll be back in a bit. Welcome back. Let's have a look at Ambassador Omar's 6 Qs. Ambassador Omar, outside of your diplomatic duties, what are some of your hobbies or interests that you have enjoyed, or rather you enjoy, during your free time?
Yeah, there's a few of them. I'd say tennis for a start. So both playing tennis and watching tennis, I spend quite a lot of time doing. I do coaching twice a week at Cercle Sportif, which is a very energizing way to start my day, exhausting sometimes, but it's a sport I really enjoy. And because Rwanda has such a good climate, it means you can play it most of the year, whereas in the UK, we have quite big chunks of the year where it's too wet or too cold to be playing. And then reading, I'd say as well. Reading novels in particular is something that I just find is a helpful escape, from if you're very stressed about something, or, and it can help you think about even current issues in a slightly different way. I think art in general, but novels in particular, can really broaden your mind and broaden the way you think about things.
Do you watch some TV, news programs, or?
No, I do certainly watch TV too. We're always looking for good recommendations of new shows to watch. So if anybody knows those, then tweet at me. And then I certainly do watch the news as well. I mean, I think the BBC is often on in my house in the background, but we try and also have some lighter television watching too.
Do you watch football?
I do watch football. I am a Chelsea fan, which is a less positive thing this year. We're not doing very well. Anyway, we surrounded by Arsenal fans in my office, so I have to keep it
Even
quiet.
majority of those watching are Arsenal fans.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you cook? And if you do, what's your favorite dish?
So here I'm very blessed to have an excellent cook, Calixte, who does most of the cooking, and he has worked with us for more than 20 years at the High Commission, so he does most of that. But at home I do cook in the UK. I'd say my favorite dish, there's a Palestinian dish called moussakhan, which is a chicken dish with sumac, the spice sumac and onions and other things. And it's just delicious. But I also find that you have to eat it with your hands to fully enjoy this dish. So when I have a choice about what's going to be my special meal, that's the one I go to.
Chicken and sumac. Between cycling and hiking, which one would you go for?
Oh, definitely hiking. And there are some beautiful hikes in Rwanda. One that I remember in particular is between the Twin Lakes, between Rwanda and Rwanda. They're just such a beautiful part of the world there that I enjoy. Cycling I do enjoy, but the hills in Rwanda make the uphill cycling impossible for me. I really admire the people that I see cycling in Rwanda, but for me, I just don't have the leg muscles for it, I think.
You can't handle that. Yeah. Do you have a role model, any specific person or people that have helped shape
I
your
find that an
perspectives?
interesting question, because I think it is important to look up to people and to see people that you think you can learn from, or who can act as your mentors or other things like that. But I also don't have a single role model, because I think we need to find our own model and our own way in this world. So I don't have a single person. But who I do really admire are people who really speak their minds, who have strong convictions, who fight for what they believe in. And there are people that I would put in that category. One who I felt very fortunate to meet here in Kigali recently, actually, is the American politician Stacey Abrams, who has done a lot to sort of get minority and black communities registered to vote in the UK. And I admire her a lot. And she has a book called Lead from the Outside, which I think helps people from minority communities think about, how do I be the best kind of leader I can be? I don't have to be like the model that I see from other people. I can do it my own way. And so it's a book I really recommend to people when I'm doing kind of mentoring sessions with others.
What's the title of the book again?
Lead from the Outside.
Okay, I'll look for that. And what is the greatest source of inspiration?
I'd probably say my parents there, which I think, maybe sounds a bit cheesy, but both my parents come from pretty humble backgrounds in different ways. My father's family I've talked about, but my mother's family from working class London family, and they've worked very hard to get what they have got today. And I think they really instilled in us, A, thirst for education, but B, also a respect for other people, a respect for other cultures, a respect for anybody that we meet. And I think we're still a very close family now, despite the fact that we live in different countries and so on. And so, whenever I think about, what I would like to be like, then my parents often come to mind.
Wow, that's noble. And lastly, what would you say to the 20-year-old Omar? What has life taught you that you wish you had known at the age of 20?
I think the most important thing is be yourself, because I think particularly when you're younger, we're trying to be something different. But in being yourself, I think you really have to understand and be honest with yourself about who you are, about what your strengths and weaknesses are, and what you really love. Because I think if you try and live your life by other people's expectations, or you kid yourself about which job will interest you or which career will be fulfilling for you, that's a recipe for unhappiness. I think if you are really honest with yourself and try and follow that path, then it makes a big difference.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ambassador Omar. As we head towards the end of the conversation, for somebody who's watching the program, and that's your camera there, for somebody who's watching the program, I would love you to give your final remarks and give them that thing that you want them to take away from this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing to take away from it first is the depth and breadth of the partnership between Rwanda and the United Kingdom. And I think that that's something that matters to both our people. And I hope that we can continue to build on that. But the other thing I think is to take away, I hope, some personal advice and to think that you can be different and succeed, that you can take your own path in life. You don't have to be what anyone else is telling you to be. You can be what you want to be, and I encourage you to do that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador Omar.
Thank
It has
you.
been a pleasure sitting with you.
Thank you very much.
I've enjoyed this conversation, and I hope that you will remember what Ambassador Omar has said. Carve your own path. Don't be someone that someone else expects of you. It is possible for you to be your own person. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please use the hashtag #TheRealTalk for comments and questions. It has been such a great pleasure talking to the British High Commissioner, Omar Daair, who's also the non-resident ambassador to Burundi. My name is Jackie Lumbasi. We're looking forward to being with you again next week.